I used to believe that love could survive anything if it was wrapped in honesty. That's why, when I sat across from my husband that night, I thought I was doing the right thing. I looked into the eyes of the man who had stood by me for more than a decade and told him something no wife should ever say. I thought you loved me enough to share me. But the truth is, no one loves that much. And in that moment, I learned a brutal lesson: honesty doesn't erase betrayal. My name is Emily. I'm 35 years old, and for most of my adult life, I thought I had the kind of marriage people envied. Daniel, my husband, was steady, reliable, and endlessly patient. He was the man who remembered to fill my car with gas when I forgot, who packed my favorite snacks for road trips, who rubbed my shoulders when I worked too late. If you asked our friends, they'd say I was lucky. And maybe I was. But the truth? Safe started to feel suffocating. Stability started to feel like a cage. That's when Ryan appeared. He was everything Daniel wasn't: spontaneous, charming, reckless in a way that made my heart race. He was 3 years younger than me, with the kind of smile that made you believe you were the only person in the room. With him, I felt like the version of myself I had lost somewhere between marriage vows and grocery lists. He made me feel alive again. At first, I told myself it was harmless. A little flirtation, a harmless escape. But the longer it went on, the more I wanted. And soon enough, I crossed the line. I justified it by convincing myself that what I had with Ryan didn't mean I loved Daniel any less. I told myself that modern love was flexible, that maybe, just maybe, Daniel would understand if I was just honest about it. I rehearsed that conversation in my head for weeks. I imagined Daniel being hurt, yes, but then I pictured him nodding, trying to understand, because that's the kind of man he was. Forgiving. Steady. My Daniel. I convinced myself that honesty would make my betrayal somehow less cruel. But the moment I finally spoke the words out loud, the moment I told him about Ryan, I realized how wrong I had been. The look in his eyes wasn't confusion, or even anger. It was something far worse. And that's when it hit me: honesty doesn't soften betrayal. It just makes the cut sharper. When I look back, I realize how deceptively perfect our life appeared from the outside. Daniel and I married young, in our 20s, when love felt like enough to build a life on. We weren't rich, but we worked hard and built a comfortable home together. He had a steady job, I had mine, and together we carved out a rhythm that most couples would envy. People used to tell me how lucky I was. They'd see us holding hands at barbecues, smiling at weddings, laughing at inside jokes no one else understood. And maybe for a long time, I was lucky. Daniel was the kind of man you could depend on, the type who never forgot anniversaries, who made sure the bills were paid on time, who would rather skip a night out if it meant spending time with me. But somewhere along the way, comfort became routine, and routine became dull. Daniel was calm when I wanted excitement, rational when I craved chaos, gentle when I longed for fire. I started to feel like I was fading into the background of my own life, like I was playing the role of good wife, while the real me, the woman who once dreamed of adventure, was slowly disappearing. That's when Ryan came along. I met him at the gym, of all places. He was younger than me by a few years, fit, with an energy that was magnetic. He didn't ask me how my day was in that polite, obligatory way. He asked about my dreams. He teased me, made me laugh, made me feel seen again. With him, I wasn't Daniel's wife. I was just Emily, wanted, desired, alive. It started small. A coffee after workouts. A text late at night. The kind of little things that felt harmless, until they weren't. One night, when he brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, I didn't stop him. When he leaned closer, I didn't pull away. And just like that, a line was crossed. I told myself I could keep it separate, that my heart still belonged to Daniel while my body wandered into dangerous territory. But guilt has a way of seeping in, poisoning even the sweetest moments. I'd come home to Daniel's smile and feel the weight of my secret pressing against my chest. Most people would have ended it there. But I wasn't ready to give up Ryan, or Daniel. Instead, I convinced myself that maybe love didn't have to be one thing. Maybe we could redefine it. Daniel had always forgiven my little mistakes before, surely he could forgive this too, if only I were honest. I imagined the conversation countless times, me explaining, him hurting but eventually understanding, because Daniel was steady like that. Patient. Loving. He'd bend, I thought. He always did. But what I didn't see then, what I should have known all along, was that Daniel's patience wasn't weakness. It was strength. And one day, that strength would be the very thing that broke me. I'll never forget the night I told him. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table, reading the paper like he always did after dinner. The soft glow from the overhead light made the room feel warm, familiar, safe. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times, told myself that honesty would make everything better. That if I said it with love, he'd understand. I sat down across from him, hands trembling, and blurted it out before I lost my nerve. "There's someone else," I said. His paper lowered slowly, his eyes lifting to mine. I forced myself to keep talking. "His name is Ryan. But I don't want to leave you. I want us to work this out." The words hung in the air like poison. I rushed on, desperate to fill the silence. "Daniel, I love you. You're my best friend, my partner. But with Ryan, it's different, it's passion, it's excitement. I don't want to give either of you up. Why can't we? I don't know, redefine what love means. Other people do it. Modern love doesn't have to be so rigid. At least I'm being honest instead of sneaking around." His face didn't move. No flicker of anger, no furrow of confusion, just silence. That unreadable silence made my stomach twist. I leaned forward, my voice gaining confidence, almost arrogance, as if I could persuade him into agreeing. "Daniel, you've always forgiven me. You've always understood me. Why can't you try to understand this too?" Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, he spoke. His voice was low, steady, terrifying in its calmness. "You expect me to accept the man who sleeps with my wife. You expect me to share you like your property." The way he said "my wife" made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. For the first time, I realized how deep I had cut him. My honesty wasn't noble. It was a knife I had plunged straight into his chest, and I was too blind to see it until it was too late. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the words died on my tongue. What defense could there be? That I wanted passion. That I was bored. Nothing I could say would take away the look in his eyes. He pushed back his chair slowly, deliberately, and stood. No shouting. No tears. No begging. Just quiet finality. Without another word, he walked past me, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. And then came the silence. That silence was worse than any rage. It was colder than betrayal, sharper than words. It was the sound of a man deciding he would no longer carry me, no longer bend, no longer forgive. And in that silence, I realized, I hadn't just asked for too much. I had lost everything. The days that followed were a blur of silence. Daniel didn't come home that night, or the night after. At first, I told myself he just needed time to cool off, that he'd come back once he processed everything. But days turned into weeks, and the man who had once been the center of my world became a ghost. I texted him, called him, left long, desperate voicemails. Nothing. My messages went unread, my calls unanswered. It was like I had ceased to exist in his world. Ryan was still there, of course, but something about him felt different now. The thrill I had once clung to began to fade when I no longer had Daniel's steady presence waiting at home. Ryan didn't seem as charming when I compared him to the man who had loved me without conditions. He grew impatient with my mood swings, uninterested when I talked about the mess I had made. He was fun when we were sneaking around, when it was a secret game. But with reality staring us in the face, his attention drifted. I began to see that to Ryan, I was just excitement, a distraction. Not someone he wanted to build a life with. Meanwhile, the world around me started to collapse. Friends who once admired our marriage now avoided me. Family members gave me looks that burned with quiet disappointment. People whispered, and I could feel the sting of judgment in every room I walked into. I thought being honest with Daniel would preserve some dignity, that at least I could say I hadn't lied. But honesty didn't shield me. It destroyed me. Because what good is truth when the truth is that you betrayed the one person who trusted you most? I told myself I hadn't wanted to lose Daniel, only wanted more. More passion, more fire, more excitement. But what I didn't realize until he was gone was that Daniel had been enough. He had always been enough. And now, his absence hollowed me out in a way I couldn't explain. At night, lying beside Ryan, I would close my eyes and ache for the steady rhythm of Daniel's breathing, the quiet safety of his hand on mine. I thought I had chosen freedom, but all I had chosen was emptiness. And the worst part was knowing this, Daniel wasn't just avoiding me. He was erasing me. Eventually, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. Weeks had stretched into months, and the void Daniel left behind became unbearable. I told myself I just needed closure, that if I could look him in the eyes one last time, explain myself, maybe he'd understand. Maybe he'd give me a chance to fix what I had broken. So one afternoon, I drove to his workplace. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, my heart pounding with both fear and hope. I had this picture in my head of Daniel seeing me walk in, surprised but secretly relieved, maybe even willing to talk. But that picture shattered the moment I stepped inside. Daniel was there, sitting at a table in the break room, and he wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him, her hand resting casually on his arm as she leaned in, laughing at something he'd said. She was beautiful in a soft, approachable way. Not flashy, not loud, just kind. The kind of woman who radiated warmth. I froze in the doorway, unable to move. Daniel noticed me before she did. His eyes met mine, steady and unreadable, but this time I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks: peace. The woman turned then, and he introduced her with a calmness that cut deeper than any outburst ever could. "Emily, this is Claire." Just like that. No hesitation. No apology. As if the chapter of his life with me had already ended, and she was the new beginning. It hit me like a tidal wave. He hadn't fought for me, hadn't begged me to stay, hadn't tried to convince me to come back. He had simply replaced me. I was the one who thought I held all the power, juggling two men, thinking I could decide how love should work. But Daniel had shown me the truth: when respect is gone, love doesn't fade, it disappears. Completely. I stumbled out of there, humiliated, heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand an explanation. But deep down, I knew I didn't deserve one. When I went back to Ryan, hoping for comfort, I found only distance. He was pulling away, making excuses, growing colder by the day. The thrill had worn off, and he had no interest in the wreckage left behind. He never wanted forever, he only wanted the chase. And so, just like that, I was left utterly alone. Daniel had found someone better. Ryan had grown bored. And I was left with the bitter truth that I had traded a lifetime of love for a fleeting rush of excitement. The scariest part wasn't that Daniel didn't love me anymore. It was realizing how easily he could stop. When the dust settled, when the shouting, the tears, and even the silence were gone, I was left with nothing but the echo of my own choices. I thought honesty would save me. I thought that by confessing my affair to Daniel, I was somehow giving our marriage a fighting chance. I told myself, truth is better than lies, at least now he knows. But what I never understood was that honesty after betrayal isn't noble, it's just another cut, a final twist of the knife. Daniel didn't scream. He didn't call me names. He didn't beg me to stay. Instead, he simply chose silence. A silence that felt heavier than any fight we ever had. And when I saw him later, standing beside Claire, the woman who looked at him with the kind of respect I'd stopped giving, I finally understood. He hadn't forgiven me, and he hadn't tried to win me back. He had simply moved on. That was his revenge. Not anger, not cruelty, just absence. His quiet dignity spoke louder than any words I could have begged for. I had always mistaken Daniel's steadiness for weakness. His calm presence, his predictability, the way he never tried to play games, I saw it as dull. I thought Ryan's chaos, his charm, his intensity were signs of passion, of real love. But passion without loyalty is just fire without a fireplace. It burns hot, then dies, leaving nothing but ash. And Ryan, the man I risked everything for. He was never planning on catching me. He was just a thrill seeker, chasing the excitement of what was forbidden. The moment it became heavy, the moment I leaned on him for more than secret kisses and stolen afternoons, he pulled away. I wasn't his future, I was just his distraction. So here I am. No Daniel. No Ryan. No love story to claim as my own. Just a broken marriage, a ruined reputation, and a heart that finally understands what respect really means. Respect isn't about never making mistakes, it's about never crossing the line that makes forgiveness impossible. I crossed it. I thought love could survive betrayal if I wrapped it in truth. But the truth didn't heal, it destroyed. If I could go back, I'd choose differently. I'd choose patience over thrill, commitment over chaos, Daniel's quiet love over Ryan's dangerous spark. But life doesn't give do-overs. It only gives you consequences. And now, every night when I close my eyes, I hear Daniel's silence. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared enough not to fight for something I had already killed.